Hey, I'm Hannah, and I'm a doctor with type 1 diabetes. And today I'm going to talk about 5 things that I personally avoid in my diet. The first one is sodium nitrate and sodium nitrite. These are known as nitrates, and they're a preservative found in processed meats, specifically hot dogs, ham, bacon, and deli. These are so common, especially in a traditional grocery store. If you go to the processed meat aisle, it's amazing how many brands have this in them. The reason that I avoid sodium nitrate and sodium nitrite in food is because these nitrates and nitrites can convert to something called nitrosamines. They're carcinogenic, especially when they're cooked at high heat, which is what we do for a lot of things like bacon and hot dogs. Carcinogenic means causing or increasing the risk of cancer. And specifically, these are linked to colorectal cancer and stomach cancer. These are ingredients that are legal in the United States, so I always check the back of a nutrition package when I'm purchasing these foods in the grocery store. Now, something to consider is that a lot of people look at the nutrition facts as in the white, black and white box on the back of food labels that has the calories. And they kind of look at calories and carbohydrates and salt, maybe, and they take a look to see if something's healthy. And that's a good thing to do. It can be a healthy practice, especially when you're learning about foods. But what I think is far more important is looking at what comes underneath it typically, and that's the ingredients list. Now, I always look at the ingredients list on packaged foods where I don't typically look at the other nutrition facts anymore because I'm not interested in calories as much as I am chemicals. Now, this is a personal choice after learning a lot about what food types work for me and understanding what amount of carbs and what amount of calories is going to be a good fit. But the ingredients is something that is highly variable around different food packages and companies that make food. And I want to know what I'm putting in my body. So the ingredients is going to include all of the things that are put into the food. And what a lot of people don't know is they're actually in order of the biggest amount to the least amount. So if you have sugar or high fructose corn syrup in one of the top 5 ingredients, that's going to be a whole lot of what's in there. So that's helpful to understand. But sodium nitrate, sodium nitrites, not a choice that I typically make for myself, especially not when I'm grocery shopping and bringing foods home to eat in my house, because that's where a lot of my habits around food come from. The next thing that I typically avoid in my food choices is artificial food coloring. And this is something that has been highly controversial in the US over the last couple of decades. We know that some of these food coloring, specifically red dye number 40, has been outlawed in other countries. And we also know that it has shown up to cause worsening of some symptoms for different diagnoses like ADHD. Artificial coloring, that includes red dye number 3, red dye number 40, yellow number 5 and 6. And these are synthetic colors that we put in our food to make it pretty or more appealing. And it's amazing. We can find these in dog food. We can find these in a lot of processed food, especially processed food that's designed for kids or it's got pretty colored frosting. These are so common in grocery stores. There was a recent legal change taking red dye number 40 out of foods in the future in the United States, where it's been taken out of foods as far as what's legal in other countries for quite a while now. And the reason is red dye number 40 is correlated with thyroid tumors in animal studies and other issues in conditions ADHD and worsening of symptoms. It's been well studied, but for me as a physician and going through nutritional sciences in undergrad and studying integrative and functional medicine, food dye number 40 is something that we have been advising people against for a very long time based on the data. And it's something that I've taken out of my diet personally for the most part. I would not buy anything with food coloring for my household when I'm grocery shopping. And the reason I keep bringing this up is because it's really important to me that my foods are healthy from a habit perspective, from a routine perspective. I will absolutely, when I'm eating at someone else's house or I'm at a party, I'll eat a cookie with icing on it that's got red dye number 40 and not stressed when it's these kind of more rare, less recurrent events. But what I really focus on for my nutrition health is the day in and day out. Like, what are the most common lunches I'm going to? What are the default breakfasts I have? What are the foods that I'm getting from the grocery store that are in my home? What am I eating the most? That's really where I focus on things. If I'm picking out food, let's say I'm on a road trip and we stop somewhere and I go in to look for a snack bar, absolutely, I'll look at the ingredients. when I have the option to make a decision about what I'm eating. But if I'm at someone else's house where someone else is serving food, I stress less about it. So it's not an all or nothing approach, but it is something that I think is helpful to understand, because the more that we understand about the food that we're putting into our body, we could be more empowered to make a decision that feels right and aligned with our long-term health goal. The next thing that I avoid in my diet is aspartame. Aspartame is a very common artificial sweetener that we'll see in diet candies, diet sodas, sugar-free drinks. It's something that we use quite often in the United States. And the reason that it's on my list of things to avoid is because some studies suggest a cancer link with aspartame. And the suggestion is that this happens only in high doses. But regulatory bodies like the FDA consider it safe in moderation. I personally don't want something that has a link with cancer in my diet, regardless of the amount. That's just not aligned with my long-term health goal. So this is a personal choice of mine. In 2023, the World Health Organization classified this on the list of possibly carcinogenic. And this goes back to it being a personal choice. I don't think we have to be scared of these things, certainly. I think it's okay if I have them a couple times a year, but I don't want something that's possibly carcinogenic in my body as far as my long-term health goals and what I want for my future and my family. And so that's not something that I choose to take on. Now, aspartame is the one that has the most studies here that are linked in the carcinogen category or concern for. But I also avoid all artificial sweeteners. And this is a personal choice, I think, especially with type 1 diabetes, because I know that people love to indulge in artificial sweeteners because it's a lot easier to bolus for and maintain balanced blood sugars than regular sugar. And so it's a great kind of treat that makes things easy. But I know personally, when I eat artificial sweeteners, what happens is I end up getting a sweet tooth and I crave sugar more. These artificial sweeteners are highly sweet, especially in things like Diet Coke, diet sodas. What we see is that our body gets used to this kind of sweetness and then we crave it more later. And that's not something I want. I find if I don't drink artificially flavored things or artificially sweetened things, then I don't crave sugary drinks and I don't crave sugar that often. I don't crave desserts. If I start drinking Diet Coke sometimes and then I'm more interested in desserts, and it's harder for me to decide when I want to eat them or how much I want to eat. It just feels like a battle in my head going back and forth. And we know that when we eat hyperpalatable foods or foods that are highly processed to really stimulate dopamine centers in our brains, then we crave sugar more. That's by design. And so for me, I don't like to put extra sweet things in my body because it just helps me enjoy the taste of carrots more. And like to eat things like dark chocolate instead of needing a really sweet milk chocolate with a lot of sugar. I can enjoy flavor profiles at a less sweet place because I'm not so used to high levels of sweetness. And there's a lot of data there. The other thing that we're starting to see with artificial sweeteners is that for people without diabetes, without type 1 diabetes, they're getting similar metabolic signaling that is not optimally correlated with weight loss or maintaining optimal weight. We know that artificial sweeteners can be correlated with a decrease in the beneficial balance of the microbiome, and gut health is really important to me, especially since I've struggled with it in the past and learned to balance it. And so I don't like the stress on the beneficial bacterial balance that it can bring. The next thing that I avoid is potassium bromate. Now, this is a preservative that is found in a lot of baked goods. It's a flour preserver. And this is correlated with tumors and animal studies. Now, what's really interesting and I think quite compelling is that this ingredient is illegal in food in Europe and China and Canada, but it is still legal in the United States. Now, when countries and the best of their scientists come together and choose to make an additive to food illegal because they're concerned about the side effects of it and don't think it's best for the country, that's when I really get a red flag about, okay, is this something I want to be putting in my body, even if it is legal here in the US? And for me, with potassium bromate, the answer is no. So I look at that again on the ingredients list underneath the nutrition facts on the back of packages. And similar to that is titanium dioxide. Titanium dioxide is another preservative agent that you can find in chewing gums and candies, and it is also correlated with DNA damage in animal studies. Now, this is something that is banned by the entire European Union, but still legal here in the US. And so that's another component or preservative that I'm not interested in putting in my body. Now, these are just the five that I thought of that I feel like are less well known or maybe less on people's radar as they're looking for foods or reading that ingredients list and not sure kind of what to make up of it. There are many others. Another more well-known one that a lot of people talk about is carrageenan. That's something else that I avoid, another type of preservative. But to go over our list here, we're talking about sodium nitrate and sodium nitrite, all artificial colors, that's specifically red dye number 40, aspartame, and for me, other fake sweeteners, artificial sweeteners, including sucralose. The only non-sugar sweetener I add to food is stevia or monk fruit. Other than that, I'll use things like maple syrup or agave or real sugar alternatives like honey. And then potassium bromate and titanium dioxide. And I have these listed down here for you if you're interested in copying the list. But these are things that I personally choose to avoid from food. You're not bad for eating them. Knowledge is power, and understanding that there are things that are in our diet that may not be aligned with our long-term goals is really helpful because it then allows us to make the choice of whether or not we want to eat them routinely. Having a healthy mindset about preservatives and taking them out of our diet, but also not being afraid of them, I think is so crucial and not something that we maybe talk about often enough. So I personally am not afraid of these things that I avoid. I just avoid them because they're not aligned with my long-term goals. I want to be happy and healthy into my later years. And I don't want anything that's a possible carcinogen or has other negative effects potentially impacting that negatively. And so that's why I'm cautious in this area. If you've eaten these before, does not mean that you will get cancer. I certainly grew up on a lot of aspartame and red dye number 40, and I feel great about my health now. And I understand that I just didn't know then what the risks were, and I know now. And so I have no regrets or remorse about eating them before. I'm not concerned that because I did, I will get cancer in the future. I'm just making the best decisions that I can with what I know. But remember that fear around food is not a healthy choice in general. So that's not what we're going for here. We're just talking about things to look out for in that ingredients list. If you're interested in more things that can be helpful for long-term food quality or preservative health choices, I really love the Environmental Working Group annual report called the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. And what they do is each year they test common produce eaten in the US and they look at what amount of preservatives like herbicides and pesticides are on the food. And then they publish a list of the 15 most clean items. So items that when not bought organic have very low levels of herbicides and pesticides on them. And then they publish a list called the Dirty Dozen, and that's the 12 most heavily laden herbicide and pesticide fruits and vegetables. And so what I choose to do is use that Dirty Dozen list, and I don't buy non-organic produce on that Dirty Dozen list. And then the Clean 15 list, I won't buy those organic because it makes less of a difference. And so that's a personal choice that we do here in our household. I've been following this list for a really long time, but I do believe that it helps me cut down on some of the chemical burden coming into my body. And I think that's an important part of me feeling like I'm living a healthy, happy life is understanding we have more chemicals in our environment than we used to 30, 50 years ago. And so shifting our decisions can be a helpful choice. Again, not from a place of fear, but from a place of empowerment. So thanks for sticking to the end. If you'd like more videos like this and you're interested in some of the nuances of nutrition that we talk about less online, but are really evidence-based and taught through integrative and functional physicians, please let me know. And I'm happy to do more deep dives like this because I think they're really fun. And if you're interested in learning these things, it's nice to have a place to learn it that's succinct and explanatory without having to read a textbook. So I hope that this was helpful. And if you're interested in type 1 diabetes and mindset choice, I've got a course coming out about type 1 diabetes and mindset that really looks at how to curate a mindset that feels really good and empowering for you specifically with type 1 diabetes, how to take down limiting beliefs that maybe came up from what other people told us, whether that was friends or doctors or social media, and to really look at fears in a way that is more enlightening and allows them to shrink and fall away so that we're left with an empowered understanding of our health and what we want to do about it. And so if you're interested in something like that, this course will come out in the next couple weeks. I have a wait list for it right now. If you want to join, it'll be in the description at the top there. You can sign up and then you'll get an email when that's ready and be one of the first to know. So thanks so much and for sticking to the end. And I hope that I will see you again around here pretty soon. I've also got videos coming out after this for you to choose from if you're interested in watching another one.